14 Bannerman Road is where Sarah Jane Smith lived.
And 14 Bannerman Road is the name of my podcast about it. This time, Series 1, Episode 0, Invasion of the Bane. Written by Russell T Davies and Gareth Roberts. Directed by Colin Teague. And first broadcast on the 1st of January 2007. But before that, why? Why am I making this podcast about a show that first aired when I was 6 years old? Well, I'm a big Doctor Who fan, and the Sarah Jane Adventures is undeniably the best Doctor Who spin-off. Let's go through them, there's not many. First up is K9 and Company, actually starring Elizabeth Sladen, who played Sarah Jane Smith, and it did have a banging theme tune, but there was only one pilot episode, so yeah. Next is Torchwood, that I stopped watching when they decided the only thing missing from a Cyberman was sex appeal. Then we've got the Australian K9 series that's legally not allowed to refer to Doctor Who, Class, which we don't talk about, and Daleks, which ain't really my jam, and it looks like it's fallen out of the time vortex on its way from the early 90s. Which, to be fair, it's Doctor Who, so it could well have done. Sarah Jane Adventures evidently is head and shoulders above all of them. So that being said, it did first air 14 years ago. So I want to see if it holds up. Let's do it. So, the episode starts off, right, with no Clyde at the start. You know, I just played 13 Bannerman Road is where Sarah Jane Smith lives. That doesn't come until Series 3. Instead, we have a monologue from Sarah Jane. And she's talking about how, like, Earth, you know, she saw amazing things in space when she went travelling with the Doctor. But there's amazing things on Earth as well, if you know where to look. And I've just realised, right, that's their cute little way of saying we don't have the budget of Doctor Who, so we're going to keep all our stories confined to Earth. And then there's a sweet transition, because there's like a picture of the Earth, and then it turns into the thing for Bubble Shock, the logo for Bubble Shock, which is really nice. And the story is basically, there's this drink called Bubble Shock, and everybody loves it, apart from 2% of people. 98% of people love it. And it contains Bane. I'm like, oh, what's Bane? Nobody really knows, but it's like, it's organic, so it's fine, right? And then it turns out it's actually not. But before all that, the first thing we're really greeted with is Maria Jackson, who's just moving in across the road from where Sarah Jane lives, because her parents have just split up. And they've sold the old house because her mum gets like half the money of it or something. And Maria's mum, she comes across a little bit dodgy, right? Like, there's removal men, and she makes some comments about them and their bums, and it's like, oh, okay. So did it age well? Maybe that didn't. Maybe that bit didn't really age that well. So, you know, it's not the worst, but it's not great. But yeah, so we have the first 5 minutes, which is basically setting up Maria, which is interesting for a thing called the Sarah Jane Adventures, that you're going to be setting up Maria basically as a protagonist. And like, I get it, right? This is a show for kids. She's a kid. She's the one you're going to identify with and everything. But Sarah Jane comes off a little bit, sort of a little bit like, she keeps brushing the kids off, like, oh, you know, she brushes everyone off, really. She doesn't want anything to do with anyone. You know, she's kind of like, oh, go away. And even when she saves people later on in the episode, she's like, oh, you know, don't go in the attic, don't, you know, go home, forget all this ever happened. Which, like, we love Sarah Jane. She's the best. But if you didn't know an awful lot about her, she does take some warming to, which is, again, a very interesting thing for a program called the Sarah Jane Adventures. So what really sort of kicks off everything at first is that it's nighttime, and Maria can't sleep, or she either gets woken up or she can't sleep. But she sees these wibbly lights across the road, and so she sneaks out and goes and sees Sarah Jane, who in her garden is just chatting to an alien. Just an alien in the garden. The alien is a star poet, which I believe there was a star poet in an episode of Torchwood. So that's nice. It ties the world in. I really like all that stuff. Like all the little Easter eggs and things that tie the world in. But yeah, she's chatting to a star poet. Just like, I know it's nighttime, but like, you did a really, really bad job of hiding them, right? And it's like, I guess it's up to the star poet if they want to be seen or not. But you're just out in the garden. Like, Maria saw it, and thankfully, thankfully, Maria just thinks she's going mad instead. That's great. And then before she can really chat to her dad about any of that, in comes Kelsey, the neighbour. Kelsey. Oh, Kelsey. Now, there are two black characters in this episode. One of them is Leslie, who works at the Bubble Shock place. I don't think she's one of the Bane. I think she's just a normal person, which kind of makes you wonder how she didn't like twig that weird stuff was going on, right? But whatever. She's basically there. She might have some lines, but none of them serve the plot. She's there to get beaten up in a lift, right? There's not a lot to her. And then Kelsey is very brash and boisterous, and like I get why, because she is there to push the plot along and to go, hey Maria, come with me, get on the Bubble Shock bus, let's go to the factory. She is a driving force in this plot, but you kind of hate her, right? And like, you hate her on purpose. She's written to be annoying and boisterous and whatever. It's not an accident. That is her character. But it's a bit of a negative stereotype, really, isn't it? Like, oh look at this kid who's doesn't have any manners and all this. It's like, oh, it feels like, I feel like it's probably not from a place of hatred. It's a bit more from a place of ignorance. Like, they've got a checklist and they've gone, okay, so we've got the alien, yeah, and we've got Sarah Jane, and we've got a Sonic lipstick, and we've got the black character, tick. They've ticked her off and everything. And haven't really... the thoughts never really crossed their mind that the way in which they portray them is also quite negative. They've just gone, oh, no, we got a black character, bosh, there we go, tick that one off. So that could be better. The show's 14 years old, but like, do better. There's obviously like nobody of colour in the higher up team, really. Or if they were being very ignored, which isn't great. So yeah, so we've got Kelsey, and she moves the plot along, and they go to the Bubble Shock factory, and after getting on the Bubble Shock bus, which basically just blares some music and then drink it. This is kind of the whole thing about just everyone go around saying drink it, and it's essentially taking over the world, this Bubble Shock, in both a literal and a figurative sense. And pretty much immediately once we're at the factory, like, we see it's dodgy. Like, they do the thing where it's like the audience knows more than the characters, because you've got Mrs. Wormwood, who's in charge of everything, and she's acting very evil, and you see this shot of a body under a sheet, and he's got like a breathing mask on and everything, and there's all the people in the background of the Bubble Shock factory with all their computers all twiddling away at it. and it's quite creepy. Like, imagine little 6-year-old me watching that, seeing the body of a child under a white sheet in this dim room with all people like experimenting on them. That's enough to freak you out, Dad. And so, like, Sarah's seen Kelsey and Maria go off to the factory. So Sarah, at the same time, has gone off to the factory just to figure out what's going on, because she knows it's a bit suspicious. And she's got her tech. She's got her sonic lipstick and a little watch scanner and everything, which are designed for the show. They aren't a Sarah Jane thing. It's just sort of assumed that maybe the Doctor gave them to her when he gave her K9 because she popped up in School Reunion, the episode of Doctor Who, and that's where he gave her K9, and that's where everybody sort of went, "Oh, Sarah Jane, yeah, she's back, she's brilliant," and that's where the spin-off show idea came from. And I do like that she uses her sonic lipstick to get in and opens the door and pretty much immediately gets caught. There's just some big burly lads in like orange jumpsuits and hard hats. And she's just like, whoops. And then she goes, "Oh, I'm Sarah Jane." And then I don't think it's ever really explained how. But Mrs. Wormwood knows who Sarah Jane is. Because she goes, it says her name's Sarah Jane. And they're like, "Oh, invite her up then." And so down in the Bubble Shock factory, they're trying to get everyone to drink it, and Maria is one of the 2% of people who doesn't like it. So she says the world's most British sentence, which is, "I'd rather have a cup of tea," and then cut to Sarah Jane being served a cup of tea. Because there's a lot of like that stuff that's very competent. Like they're like, "Okay, we're making a show. We'll do like we'll match up the line with the visual, and like we'll do the nice transition from the planet into the logo and like everything." There's a lot of that, and then especially later on in the episode, there's a lot of like it's somebody's first day on a camera, and they've just like found out that the camera can zoom, and they're like, "Yeah, let's zoom in everything, let's use it, let's go crazy with it," and all the like weird angles and everything, and like cut 10 times per second. And it's really weird. There's a lot of stuff that's really obvious and planned out and really good, mixed in with a lot of kind of over the top crazy stuff. It's very bizarre. And there's like a Dutch angle and like a zoom in as Mrs. Wormwood is chatting to Sarah Jane, and she's going on this like her villainous speech about how all the Western world does is consume, and all they do is eat and drink and everything. And it's zooming into her, and it is, looking back at it as an adult, it is hilarious. But like, it's the perfect level of sort of campy, dramatic, like over the top, chew the scenery a bit kind of stuff that I love. It's so entertaining, and that's the thing. I think first and foremost, this episode is entertaining, and I think that's like it's a kid show. It's a kid show. That's what you want. You want to come home from school, you want to put Sarah Jane Adventures on, and you want to be entertained, and like they've got that down to a T. There's a cameo from Blue Peter, talking about how Bubble Shock is like brilliant, and they're like, "Oh, the BBC shouldn't advertise and whatever, but this is too good." And it's like, well, first up, I love that. It's on the BBC. Use your other shows, tie them in. It ties everything into reality, which is great. I mean, there's later on there's giant squiddy monsters running around all over the place. It's ridiculous, but that's what Doctor Who is. It's ridiculous stuff. But when you're on Earth, it's like, oh, it's ridiculous stuff happening on Earth. And you know what happens on Earth? Kids sit down and they watch Blue Peter. And to have Blue Peter saying, hey, Bubble Shock's great, it's just like the neatest little thing that I really love. And it's also kind of almost a little touch for the adults, because as a kid, you don't really care about like the BBC's advertising rules. Like as a kid, I don't think I ever really gave a damn. Like the CBBC never had adverts and like CITV did. It didn't like click in my mind at all. But as an adult, if you see somebody from a BBC show going, oh, I know the BBC's not supposed to advertise, but Bubble Shock is just too good. You're like, that's funny. That is quite funny, and I love it very much. And then there's the great sort of moment of Maria's already said, oh, I'd rather have a cup of tea. And then Mrs. Wormwood is trying to get Sarah Jane to drink some Bubble Shock. And she just goes, I'd rather die. Oh, way to one-up Maria, huh? Now, she goes off to the lift. Like she's like, okay, I found all I can here. She goes to leave, and they send Leslie to escort her out. But it's actually Leslie's job to kill Sarah Jane. Oh my goodness! Oh no! And Sarah like catches her going to move in the reflection of the lift, and like whacks her with her elbow or whatever, and like essentially beats her up, which is not expected. When you think of Sarah Jane, you don't think of her beating someone up in a lift, but it kind of makes sense, right? I kind of get where they're coming from, because she was a companion of the third and fourth Doctor, and I haven't watched a lot of old Who, watched only a tiny little bit, but the third Doctor, from what I've gathered, was very he fancied himself as a bit of an action hero, right? There's something like Venusian Aikido or something. I don't know, but it's like there's like martial arts stuff. It makes sense that Sarah Jane has picked that up. It's kind of a callback to that, I think, and it's quite neat. I mean, it gets her out of the peril that the script has written in for no good reason, really. Leslie's kind of pointless as a character, but like we love her. But like, she's not got a lot going on. She's there to serve a cup of tea and get beaten up in a lift. So we can call back to Sarah Jane's beating people up days. And then we go and see Mrs. Wormwood talking to the big old Bane mother. It's either Mrs. Wormwood talking or it's Davy, who is the like tour guide kind of guy. And Kelsey describes him as a muffin, which is meant to mean he's hot. It's weird. That's a weird phrase to call someone a muffin. Like I don't know if that was a thing in 2007. January 2007, everyone was like, oh, he's a muffin, and I was too young to know, or if it's just completely made up. I've not a clue. But it actually seems to be a setup. I'll get to it. I'll get to it later. But it seems to be a massive setup for a like really tiny joke that barely lands. And like, I appreciate the crazy excess that they've gone to set up this joke, because it's really disproportionate to the actual punchline. So yeah, Kelsey and Maria, they're on the tour, whatever. Kelsey's like, "Oh, I'm gonna sneak off and do whatever," and phones. You're not allowed to have your phone on in the factory because it messes with the machinery or whatever. Spoiler alert: the aliens don't like him. That's why you're not allowed to have your phone on. And but Kelsey puts the phone on, and like she gets caught because it sets off an alarm and everything. But Maria's, I think, gone looking for Kelsey as well. Because I think Sarah Jane's come out and she's gone, "Hey, Maria, they're aliens. Let's get the hell out of here." But Maria's gone, "No, I can't leave Kelsey behind. I gotta go find her." And all the hiding that they do while people are trying to track him down, you've really got to suspend your disbelief. they're doing camera hiding, which is, let me stand very conspicuously by this wall, but in a way to show the camera I'm hiding, and that I'm essentially invisible now and nobody can ever see me, despite them being essentially in broad daylight, which is quite funny. But like, I get it, it's fine, it's whatever. And in all the chaos, the kid under the sheet, he's escaped. I don't know what's made him escape, really. I don't know what spurred him to. Like, he got zapped or whatever, like when the alarm went off, and then he was just like, "Right, I'm off then." And he's running about all over the place. He bumps into Maria, bumps into Sarah Jane. I'm calling him Luke now, but like he doesn't get named that till the end of the episode. He's going by the architect. No, he's not. He's going by the archetype. Well, it's not his choice really, but the Bane, Mrs. Wormwood and Davy and the Bane Mother. Bane Mother doesn't really speak. They don't seem to really speak when they're in their Bane form, but in their human form, they seem to speak perfect English, which is lucky, I must say, because I don't know how. Like, the TARDIS translates things. That's how they explain it in Doctor Who. There's no TARDIS in Sarah Jane Adventures, so I don't know exactly if they. I don't know. I don't know how they're going to deal with that. I guess all the aliens are just going to speak English, and we'll just roll with it. Didn't really think of that till now. Very interesting. But yeah, so they're at the Bane Mother now, and she looks quite good. Like, I'm watching it, it's quite low resolution. I think it was broadcast in standard definition or whatever, and like the version I've got, it's quite low res, so that hides a lot of crimes. A big old eye in the ceiling, all tentacles swirling around her. And what's funny about that is it's very much. There's that episode of Doctor Who with Simon Pegg in it, where the mighty Jagrafess, I think, is up in the. Is that the right? That might not be the right term. It might be a different alien altogether. But the mighty Jagrafess is up in the ceiling, and it's just that must have been. Oh, was that Ninth Doctor? That must have been Ninth Doctor. So that's 2005. So it's only been a couple of years since we've had a big ceiling alien monster. But that's just where they keep them, I guess. But yeah, so they're all running away. They've all teamed up. They're all trying to escape. Luke, Maria, Sarah Jane, and they go to the loo. Like, they're hiding in the loo, and then there's a window, and it's very obvious that nobody could get through that window. And like, there's a joke about, oh, they've escaped into the ladies' loo because Davy didn't think to look in there because it's the ladies, and it's like, oh, I must never go into the ladies. And it's like, oh, he's an alien, and he hasn't. He's obeying the human customs like too rigidly or whatever, and it's like, sure, whatever. But like nobody in there, nobody who wasn't like a sheet of paper could get through that window, and so they have to very specifically go, oh, only a child or a narrow-hipped woman could get through that window. And it's like, oh, okay, you've had to really lampshade that in there, which, yeah, it's just very funny for me to notice things as an adult. But like as a kid, like who cares, you know? And it's a show for kids. It's very easy to pick apart all these little nitpicky little bits, but like it doesn't make any of it bad, right? Like it's like ADR as well. There's ADR in there that's like quite obvious. I think there's a line that like barely matches up with Mrs. Wormwood's lips, and there's a bit of stuff with Maria as well, and like if she turns away, like the second her face isn't actually directly at camera, like that's really, it's all ADR and everything. But like that's what it's for. That's what it's there for. That's what you use the dialogue replacement for. It's like you didn't get it on the day. Sure, go in the booth and record it now. To make the show and to make it work. And that's like, as a kid, I don't remember noticing any of that at all. And that's like I was the target audience 14 years ago. It works really well. It works really good, and all these little things that they've had to wrangle in the plot and all that. Like, oh, only a little child could get through that window. Sure, only a little child could get through that window, so they can't follow her through the window. They've escaped. And so we're about halfway in now, which would be the length of a normal episode, but this is like a double episode for the pilot. They essentially do them as a series of two-parters. The series. So this is essentially just a two-parter that's been smushed into one. So about halfway through, Sarah is still all like, oh, okay, you've escaped the factory. They're aliens, they're after you. Go home. Forget this ever happened. And it drives home Maria's sort of insistent, persistent spirit of, no, it's too late for that now. I'm in this now. I'm sticking it out till the end. But again, it doesn't make Sarah particularly likable. I think, oh, come on, Sarah, you know, let her do this. And like, in a broader context, she went travelling with the Doctor X amount of years ago. The Doctor then dropped her off in Edinburgh or whatever he was meant to. Like, he dropped her off in the wrong place. She made her way back home, did a load of journalism, and like nobody's really been able to live up to that. And like she knows all about these aliens or whatever, and she can't talk to anybody about that. And it's made her very almost reclusive. And she's like the mad old woman who lives in that big house on Bannerman Road. And like it makes sense that when these kids start barging into her life, she's like, no, I don't, no, go away, I don't want this. I don't want you all nosing around everything. And like by the end, by the end of this episode, she softens up and she accepts them. But I guess it's very interesting to see. And right, so the Bane of scanned Sarah or whatever, and there's a mention of her having residual Artron energy, which is you absorb a bit of Artron energy when you do time travel. So it's a nice nod to her previous adventures with the Doctor. Might be is it just time travel or is it space travel as well? Is it just going through the space-time vortex regardless of where you end up? Not sure about that. It's also the energy that the TARDIS feeds off. It's, I believe it's splitting out of the rift in Cardiff. You go and fuel up there. And makes essentially the premise of Torchwood. Everything, all the aliens are coming through into Cardiff. Oh no. And then Sarah Jane Adventures is basically all the aliens are coming through to London. Oh no. Doctor Who is just aliens everywhere. Sarah Jane Adventures and Torchwood are basically Doctor Who without the TARDIS. It's just like, wait, we're in a location. And this is where we shall stay. But I do like that little mention of Archer energy and everything, because it's... I love everything that Russell T Davies did, like, with his version of Doctor Who. Like, all the stuff he'd bring up. Like, he'd be like, oh, vortex manipulators this, and, like, Ultron energy that, and it all the more alien bits. I love the more alien bits of Doctor Who that have sort of been slightly more pushed to the wayside a little bit. Like he used to, the Doctor would give his companion, like, he'd boost their phones and they'd have like space phones and they'd be able to call home and whatever. It doesn't really happen anymore. And it's just all the little Russell T Davies-y bits. I know Ultron energy is from old Who, but you know, he specifically was like, no, I'm going to reference this, I'm going to reference it now, and I'm going to bring it up here, and it's going to tie the world of Doctor Who that I'm building together, and I like that very much. And then so the next note I've got on my sheet here is, none of Maria's dad's jokes ever really land, but he is lovely, which is that's the description of Alan right there. None of his jokes ever really land, but he is lovely. He's a great character. He's just there to be lovely, and whenever Maria shouts, "Dad, I'm going out," he's just like, yeah, whatever. Like, they've just moved into a new place. This is presumably a new area they don't know very well. This girl from next door, who, like, they don't know. She's just turned up and she's gone, hey, have you got broadband? Cool. Oh, you don't have music channels? Oh, shame. Do you want to come to the bottle shop factory? Like, I don't know who this girl is. And she's like, Dad, I'm going out. Yeah, sure. And it's funny because he really does care for Maria. There's a scene of him, like, Maria's sort of crying because she's been sent home by Sarah Jane, who's essentially said, no, you can't be part of my alien fighting gang. I don't have an alien fighting gang. Go home, forget you ever saw this. And she's crying. And her dad very nicely comes up and he's all lovely, and he gives her a hug and he's like, you know, you can tell me about what's going on. And she doesn't, because saying, hey, Dad, there's a load of aliens all over the place would be odd. But true, but odd. But yeah, he's very lovely. He's just a bit. He's a little bit, like, slightly bumbling and everything, and it's very charming and endearing. And then so they've still got Kelsey, right? Maria was like, hey, I can't leave Kelsey behind, and Sarah Jane was like, yes, you can. And so they've still got Kelsey in the bubble shop factory, and Mrs. Wormwood is going through her memories, and she goes, she worships something called the Holy Oak. No, Hollyoaks. It's like, oh man, what a joke! What a joke, eh? What a joke! That one. I'm not sure how well that one landed, but man, it's like if you, it's a perfect mix of all these, like, kind of dramatic moments of, you know, no, you can't be part of my team. You go home, forget you ever saw this, and then bam, really stupid campy joke, and all this, like, stupid campy drama, which is just, it just makes me smile so much. And then there's quite the plot hole, I'll say. In that they just erase Kelsey's memories. The Bane. They're just like, no, forget you ever saw any of this. And it's like, if you can erase Kelsey's memories, you know when that lady, Sarah Jane, she came in snooping around asking you questions, was very aware that you were an alien? Why didn't you just erase her memories? And like, I know why they didn't just erase her memories. It's because there'd be no Sarah Jane Adventures program. But like that's kind of the plot hole of the episode, and maybe it's, oh, you've got to knock him out in order to do it, and like, because like they very easily knock Kelsey out, she just faints when they reveal that they're a big squiddy monster. But maybe Sarah Jane is made of stronger stuff. But even so, it's just a little weird. But does it ruin the episode? No, I think it ruins. I don't think it really matters. I think I'm still being entertained, and that is the purpose of this. And so, part of me, I'm very willing to let it go. So, Sarah Jane has kidnapped this child, the archetype. I mean, it's kind of a kidnapping, but also like he doesn't have any parents. Like he's got nowhere to go. He doesn't know anything. So Sarah's going to look after him now. And at first she's just trying to like figure out what's up with him. He doesn't have a belly button, which I'm fairly certain they did by just pulling the waist of his trousers up a bit. But yeah, he don't have a belly button or anything. He's made from everybody who goes to the bubble shot factory. They scan them and they take their genetic material, I guess. I don't know. It doesn't go into an awful lot of detail, but they've been putting it into this kid who they're growing because they need to use him to figure out why 2% of people don't like bubble shock. Because once everybody likes the bubble shock, they'll be able to take over the world with it. And their plan is very vague. It's like it's never really expanded upon more than world domination. But you know, like that's all you need, I guess. So yeah, and Sarah's saying to Luke, "Hey, don't go upstairs," which, like, it feels very much like he's going to go upstairs. But anyway, so Davey, he's given Kelsey a lift back because Kelsey's gone, oh, Sarah Jane, yeah, she lives on Bannerman Road, and they're like, aha, let's go and kill her because we couldn't do it in a lift. So no, we need to go and send Davey. So he pops up at Bannerman Road, and I think Maria spots him and comes over, and she's like, "Hey, it's the guy from the factory. Let us in." So you got Sarah Jane, you got Luke, you got Maria, and you got Kelsey in Sarah Jane's house. And outside you've got Davey trying to get in and kill him. And so he sort of reveals his true form as big squiddy monster. The Bane. The Bane is the alien. And when they say the drink contains Bane, oh, that's got some bad implications now, hasn't it? And so you got a big CGI squiddy dude climbing up the side of the house, and like he rips the door off, climbs inside, and like it doesn't look realistic, but it doesn't look bad. And I'll tell you why it doesn't look bad. It doesn't look bad because when he crawls in, he crawls along the ceiling, he knocks a light, and the light falls down and smashes. And then he's climbing up the walls, and he's knocking all the like pictures and stuff off the walls. And that's brilliant. The way to get your CGI monster to really blend in with the world is to have it interact with the world. And that's another like moment of real competence where they've gone, yes, this is how you do this. And so that's why it works really well. Because it's there, it's a physical presence. It's knocking stuff over. which is that's great. Prior to that, Kelsey's trying to flirt with him, which is like a bit dodgy because like I've got in all caps on my sheet, Kelsey, that man is significantly older than you. At least it's not the other way around, I guess. But like, that's weird. Yeah, and then Sarah runs upstairs into the attic. Nobody go up there, only me. Comes back down with a bottle of spray, a bottle of 60s Batman shark repellent, but it's 60s Doctor Who Bane repellent, and she just sprays it all over him, and he's like, "Oh no!" And it doesn't kill him, but it sends him away. And she's like, "Oh, that was my last one," and it's like, this is, well, thank goodness you had one of them left, eh, Sarah? It's very much a cop out, but sure. And then so when he turns into the alien, Kelsey goes, "Oh, that's the muffin. Like that's the dude." And then Luke is like, "Oh, it's a muffin," because Luke, he's got the knowledge of, you know, thousands of kids that have visited this factory, but he doesn't know anything, right? He's essentially been born well, not even born yesterday. He's been born 6 hours ago, and so he knows what everything. He knows everything conceptually, but he has no idea of what it is in the real world. So he gets very confused when Kelsey refers to the guy as a muffin, which, like, I don't know if that was worth it, that joke. All the setup every time you called him a muffin just so Luke could get confused at that point. I don't know if that was worth it, but I really appreciate that the dedication that they had to that joke. And so then Kelsey goes in the attic because, of course, you know, once you're told not to, you're going to, and of course it's Kelsey who does that. And there's a picture of the Brigadier. There's like a picture of like a Dalek, like a drawing of a Dalek. A picture of K9. Again, all these little things that tie into the Doctor Who universe. It's great. Kelsey's trying to flirt with Luke, which, like, leave him alone. He doesn't know what right from, he doesn't know his right from left. He has no concept of what food and drink are. He gets them mixed up. Like, leave him alone, alright? That's really taking advantage of him there. There's references to Unit and the Doctor, like, you know, Sarah Jane talking about all, you know, her past days. And Kelsey, who's of course had her memories wiped, she's like, "Oh, what? You telling me that's an alien? You telling me like that's not like that's not some visual effects in real life? I don't know. It's not a projection. It's not whatever." She doesn't believe it. I mean, you've literally just sprayed him with your anti-alien spray, like in front of your own eyes, but she doesn't believe it. And she goes, "Oh, what? So everyone's an alien, are they? Well, I'm an alien. The Pope's an alien. James Blunt's an alien. Actually, yeah, he probably is." Wow. What a way to date the episode there. That one, you've really This is 2007. James Blunt sings a song in a high-pitched voice. He's an alien. It's not a great joke. It's really not a great joke. It's just funny because it's old. And then Sarah Jane opens like a safe in her wall because everyone's in the attic now, so the secret's out. Might as well show him the safe that I've got in the wall, which is where I keep K9. Because he's busy fixing a black hole that CERN made. I mean, they say scientists in Switzerland, so it's CERN. It's like, oh, the particle accelerator, the Large Hadron Collider. Oh, it made a black hole. Woo. And K9 has to go and fix it. And K9 wouldn't have had to go and fix it if K9 and Company, not K9 and Company, sorry, the Australian K9 series wasn't a thing. Because the original people that made K9 still own him. So their series, they're not allowed to talk about Doctor Who. But Doctor Who isn't really allowed to talk about K9 without their permission. So he can only be in this vault off fixing stuff, and he can't be part of the episode. So I get that they had to write that in, because when we last saw Sarah Jane, the Doctor had left her K9. You've gone, hey, here's his K9 to keep you company and whatever. And now you'd be wondering where he is. But fixing a black hole that CERN made, and he's like, he only drifts by her, but it's like, I don't. It's the weirdest way you could have written him out, really. Which is, but sure, it's sure, whatever. He's in there, and he'll come back at some point, maybe. But you know, he's not going to be a regular fixture in these episodes. I've written down that Sarah apparently knows Kelsey's surname. Don't know how, but it's possible. I mean, they live on the same road. It's possible they have some prior history. And Davy, Baney boy, he gets eaten by the Bane mother because he's failed at his task of killing Sarah Jane because she has Bane repellent. And then Sarah's scanner watch starts going haywire. I'm like, oh, why is it going haywire? It's detecting an alien. Oh, it's detecting an alien in the juice, in Bubble Shock. Bane's in the juice. Everybody's been drinking a little bit of Bane. And there's a lovely, lovely little moment where Sarah's trying to read her scanner watch, and she's like, it contains natural aspects of... I need glasses. It contains natural aspects of Bane. And... right. Serves for a lovely little, like, bit of tension as well, where you're waiting to see what she says. But that just moment of her going, oh, I need glasses. Like, it's really unnecessary. But it's so human. Because, like, sure, you might not be able to see the tiny little print on your scanner watch. You might realise that you probably need some glasses to see that. And it's like, that doesn't affect the plot at all. But it's a great little thing. It just cements her as more than a character. She becomes like a person. And it's brilliant. And I love that so much. And then we have the cheesiest moment ever, where Alexander Armstrong comes out of the wall, of course voicing Mr. Smith, the supercomputer, Crystal, whatever. I don't get how... He's a crystal that's a computer, sure. How did, like, she build him into the wall? How did that... Anyway, all the wall, it, like, slides out and there's gas firing out and it goes do 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 do. There's a fanfare and everything. He's coming. He's going, Mr. Smith, I need you. And then, hello, Sarah J. It's very cheesy that he'd have his own fanfare, but very fun. All the little things where you go, you know, you've got a bit of drama and then it's broken up with these moments of silly fun, which is beautiful. I love it. I love it. And then they're like, he, like, finds out the phone number of the Bane or whatever. You know, he's there to analyse what the Bane are, what's going on. And it's like, oh, they want to take over the world. And he puts her through to the Bane. He phones them up. And she's like, hey, I'm going to stop you. And they're like, okay. He's like, yeah, you better stop what you're doing. I'm like, or what? He's like, or I'll do something. I'll do something really, really bad. I don't know. That's Sarah Jane's confrontation with the Bane. So she's coming off as really quite inept, which is quite funny. That she sonic screwdrivers, sonic lipsticks rather, away. Sonic lipstick, I mean, like, on the one hand, sure, it's inconspicuous. Sonic screwdriver looks nothing like a screwdriver. It's just a big wibbly weird stick, and you're like, what's going on here? Sonic lipstick could pass as lipstick. It's good, but also it's like, you know, at that point, the Doctor had only ever been a man. So it's like, sure, give a man a screwdriver, give a woman a lipstick. Yeah, it's a bit... I don't know, Sarah Jane really is able to convince you that the Sonic lipstick is just a thing. Like, it's legit, it's not funny, it's not ridiculous, it's her tool that she uses to do stuff. Like, she sells it brilliantly. But when you're detached from that for a second, and when you're, like, thinking back over the episode, it's really ridiculous. But yeah, she Sonic lipsticks the thing at the start, and, like, the people immediately find her. And now she tries to confront the Bane, and she doesn't really know what to do. And then, so Maria's like, well, what are we going to do? Do you have a plan? And it's just like, no. No, I don't have a plan. I mean, that's what makes me different. Everybody else I go up against has a plan. I don't. That's not... I mean, like, marks for honesty. Marks for honesty, sure. No marks for inspiring confidence. But anyway, the Bane are now like, okay, we need to put our plan, whatever that may be, into motion. So they flick the switch, and everybody who's been drinking Bane, has been drinking Bubble Shock, becomes a weird zombie wandering around trying to get everybody else to drink it. They're all wandering, literally going, drink it, drink it, drink it, holding out bottles of Bubble Shock, you know, shambling around like zombies would. And so, like, it's now an emergency. So everybody drive back to the factory, and this is where the, like, crazy camera work comes in. Of, you know, all the cuts, all the angles, all the zooms, all the drama as they're just... Sarah Jane, like, in the story, drives, like, she puts her foot down. She goes zoom. But when they're doing the internals, they're obviously, like, on the back of a truck or whatever. They're not actually driving when they're doing the internal shots. So they're all just kind of, like, just going along. The background's just kind of going on at a normal pace. And they're like, oh, okay, we need to jazz this up. So just letting, you know, the new guy who's just figured out that cameras can zoom, let him have a go at zooming in and everything and making it, you know, very dramatic and very like oh, it's a real race against time to get to this factory, when it's evidently really not. But it's very funny. There's a new layer of joy, because as a kid I could imagine myself being absolutely gripped. The drama, it's like they've cranked that drama notch up to 100, and I can imagine myself sitting there thinking, "Cool, they've got to get to this factory super quick," and like that entertained me then. And now looking back at it as an adult, I just find it so funny. I find it so funny that, like, that's the way they've decided to do it. And so the Sonic lipstick is, I assume, been given to her by the Doctor. Perhaps, I don't know, perhaps it was inside K9 or whatever, because it has exactly the same flaw that the Sonic screwdriver has, that it can't get through a deadlock seal. And the factory, they've deadlock sealed it, so that, like, she could get in the gates. Before she got in the gates, and then just the door will kind of open. But now they've closed the doors up, so you can't get through the door. You can get through the gates, but you can't get through the door. It's like, okay, how do we get through the door? What would the Doctor do? Let's have a think. How are we going to get through? Hard cut to bus slamming through the wall. They've just driven the bus through the wall. The Bubble Shock bus from the start. Which is great, because it gives the Bubble Shock bus kind of a point, but also its point is basically to solve an issue that has just been invented. Like, it wasn't really an issue, they invented the issue in order to give it the solution. You know, there didn't need to be a deadlock seal, they had to write the deadlock seal in order to drive the bus through instead. But it is, I think, sort of a callback to School Reunion, that episode of Doctor Who. Because I think it's Mickey crashes a car through the front of a school. I think it's Mickey that does that. I can't remember exactly, but I think K9 even like jogs his memory to try and do that. So it's very much Sarah Jane thinking back to that and thinking, okay, why don't I just crash the bus in? Which is nice, because if you haven't seen that, sure, the bus has already been set up, it makes sense. And if you have seen that, it's a little extra thing of Sarah is thinking about Doctor Who, and it ties everything in together again, which is quite neat, actually, really. So I don't mind it at all. And so then we're getting towards the end of the episode, and basically everybody is alive because of pure coincidence. Right? Like, thank God that the Bane hate phones, huh? Thank God that the Bane hate communication devices. That's really lucky. Thank God that Luke has a brilliant memory, and when Mr. Smith was phoning up the Bane with his crazy long space telephone number, Luke could remember that. Thank God that the Star Poet at the start that Sarah Jane was having a chat with left behind a communicator, like a super long range one. Just bear those all in mind. Like, they're a nice set of circumstances that have all come together. They're like all the little seeds that have been planted and now going to blossom in a big flower of coincidence, whatever the hell that means. Oh, it's ridiculous. But so the first thing they do is Maria's like, oh, well, the Bane hate phones, so I'm going to phone up someone, and they're like, oh, no, but it's not really enough to massively put them off or anything. So Luke is like, well, hey, we've got this communicator, this long-range communicator. I know the phone number of the Bane. I'll phone them up for this crazy powerful communicator. Thank goodness I can remember that. He phones them up. They all scream because they hate the communication devices. Mrs. Wormwood sort of gets in a lift and disappears, but everybody else is screaming, the Bane mother's screaming. And they take that chance to run away, because then the factory explodes. Then the factory explodes, which, like, sure, it's a great bit of drama to end the episode on. It's a great way to just clear up this factory, because we don't need this to be in further episodes. So get rid of it, blow it up. But it's a bit like, whoa, okay. We just phoned up the Bane and then they screamed and then everything exploded. And it's a literal, like, fireball proper explosion. It's not a CG one, it's practical effects. But sure, there you go, that's the thing. And so then they go home, and Maria's dad and Maria's mum, Maria's mum is like, oh, my new boyfriend, he was chasing me around doing weird zombie Bane stuff. A bit weird, wasn't it? And Maria's dad was like, oh yeah, I was chasing people around. That's really weird. You hear what they're saying on the TV? They're saying it's like weird chemicals leaked out of that factory. Oh, everyone had weird hallucinations. How bizarre is that? Right, I assume Mr. Smith has possibly had a hand in that. You know, but Mr. Smith also has a hand in forging Luke's adoption papers. Because Sarah Jane has now taken him under her wing, because he's got nowhere else to go. What's he gonna do? And then, you know, it's she's got him to look after now, and they're like, okay, we've been through this whole adventure, so Maria, sure, you know about aliens now. Like, you're part of the crew. It's me, you, and Luke. And not Kelsey, because Kelsey has just decided that everything was a weird hallucination. It's like it couldn't possibly have been real. She's up and left. Now, Clyde comes in the next episode, right? Because this is episode 0. This is the pilot, whatever. When the series starts proper, that's when Clyde comes in. But it seems bizarre, slightly, that Kelsey is basically written out at the end of this episode. This isn't a little thing they've tacked on to the next one. She is designed to only last for this episode. Seems quite weird that they didn't just go with Clyde from the get-go. It seems like they would have originally had a plan for Kelsey, and then something went wrong, and then they brought in Clyde. But no, this little line is like, oh no, Kelsey's not part of the crew. She's gone. You will never hear from her again. So, a little bizarre there. But there you go. And then when they're trying to name Luke, Sarah suggests Harry and Alistair, and Harry is Harry Sullivan, I believe, who was a companion that she was with at the same time when she was travelling with the Doctor, third and fourth Doctor. I can't remember which one, but he was one of the companions. And also Alistair is Alistair Lethbridge Stewart, the Brigadier. Is it Lethbridge Stewart? It's definitely Stewart. There's Kate Lethbridge Stewart, who is somehow related, and then there's a Gordon in there, and there's somebody that Mark Gatiss played, or Mark Gatiss, however you pronounce that. He played a Stewart or a Lethbridge or someone. Their whole family ties through Doctor Who, which is very nice. But he's the original. He is the Brigadier. And that's the one that Sarah Jane is suggesting that he could be called. But in the end, they go with Luke, which is a reference to nobody. But then they all sit there in the garden, and Sarah Jane does a fourth wall break as she looks up at the camera, which is looking down at them, and then she does the intro again. She does a little monologue from the intro, and it helps tie up the entire episode. And I'm not going to give it a score. I'm not going to give the score or anything like that. I feel like it's not made for me anymore. It's made for kids. It's a kids' show. And, you know, when I score things, I like to score things that are at least made for me. But I had an awful lot of fun. I remember watching it, but I don't remember what I really thought of it. And so to watch it now again, and, you know, to feel that joy again, and to go, oh, this is actually really entertaining, and I really like this. It just feels great, and I'm really happy that I'm doing this podcast and chatting about it now. So I hope you've had fun, and I'll be back with the next one next time. See ya.